Okay, what if I told you there was an ancient system, a single secret code that connected the perfect musical note, the exact date on the calendar, and the fundamental rhythm of the entire cosmos? Seriously, it was a system designed not just to make music, but to keep all of human society in perfect harmony with the universe itself. This is an incredible story, so let's jump right.
So it all starts with this question that sounds like it's pulled straight from a fantasy novel, right? Could the Earth itself, at the precise moment of the winter solstice, actually breathe out a single perfect musical note? Well, the ancient Chinese were convinced it could, and they came up with this pretty extraordinary method to try and capture it. They called this practice the whole qi fa. Now, a loose translation would be something like the method of waiting for the qi. The whole idea was based on the belief that this unseen energy of the universe, the qi, flows in a totally predictable rhythm. And if you were clever enough, you could actually make that energy sing.
So, how in the world did they think they could pull this off? Well, this wasn't just some philosophical idea, you know? It was a highly detailed physical experiment, part sacred ritual and part exacting science. The level of precision they were aiming for here was just staggering. Get this. Deep in a sealed underground chamber, you'd have 12 perfectly crafted pipes. Each one is filled with this impossibly fine ash, made from a very specific reed membrane. So, as the exact moment of the winter solstice arrives, the theory was that the earth chi, for that particular season, would rise up, find its one corresponding pipe, and poof, it would just blow the ash out, creating this low resonant hum. And that sound, that was considered the absolute, cosmically correct note for that time of year.
I mean, it sounds incredible, right? A system where the Earth itself is setting the pitch. But, as you can probably imagine, this raises a pretty big question. Did it actually work? Was this a real physical phenomenon? Well, even brilliant minds from China's own history had their doubts. This quote here comes from Zhu Ziyu, who was a Ming Dynasty prince, a musician, and a scientist. And this guy spent years meticulously trying to replicate that ash-blowing experiment. And you know what? He failed. Every time. He finally concluded that this wasn't a description of a physical event, but a beautiful allegory, a story meant to illustrate a much deeper mathematical truth. And that, right there, is the real heart of our story. If the whole ash-blowing thing was just an allegory, what was it an allegory for? How did the ancient Chinese create a system where music and the calendar were so perfectly intertwined? Turns out, the magic wasn't in the ground. It was in the math. Yep, the real engine behind this whole cosmic symphony wasn't some mystical earth energy. It was something far more elegant and repeatable, a brilliant mathematical formula. This was the true secret code. The method was called Sanfen Sunyi, and at its core is this deceptively simple idea. You could generate an entire 12-note musical scale from a single starting pipe just by applying one repeating mathematical rule. And it all starts with this number, 81. This was the foundational unit of length for the very first pipe. This was the most important note in the entire system, and it was known as the huangzong, or the yellow bell. Every single other note would be born from this one. So how do you get the next note? You perform the first operation, which the ancients called sun, which basically means to subtract. You take the length of your starting pipe, 81, and you subtract 1/3 of its length. Or to put it more simply, you just multiply it by 2/3, which gives you 54. A pipe of this new length produces a new, higher note called linzeng. And just like that, with one simple calculation, you've the first two notes of your cosmic scale. You've just generated a perfect musical fifth. And this simple process is literally the key to the entire system. From that second pipe, you'd apply the rule again. So if the next note you calculated was too high, you'd do the opposite, yi, and add 1/3 to the pipe's length to make it lower. By just alternating this process of adding and subtracting 1/3, you could generate all 12 notes of the cosmic scale, all from that one single starting pipe. So here's the crucial point. This wasn't just about creating a musical scale to play songs with. No, for the ancient Chinese, these 12 mathematically perfect notes were a map of the universe's annual cycle. Each note was a season. And this is where it builds into something truly profound. The huangzhong, our starting note, corresponded to the winter solstice, that exact moment yang energy begins to stir again in the darkness.
Another note, Taikyu, was tied to the start of spring, when everything bursts forth with new life. Weibin was the summer solstice, when that yang energy is at its absolute peak. Every single note had a name, a time of year, and a deep philosophical meaning tied to the cycles of nature. And this is the part that really changes how you think about it. For them, music wasn't just entertainment. It was a tool, a technology. The idea was that if your kingdom's official pitch pipes were correctly tuned to this cosmic mathematical standard, then your laws, your calendar, and your entire society were in harmony with the natural order of the universe. Now, you might be thinking, this is all just a fascinating piece of ancient history, but the quest to perfect this very system has a direct, and I mean a direct, line to the music you listen to every single day. But here's the catch. The ancient Sanfen Sunyi was brilliant, but it wasn't quite perfect. After you cycle through all 12 of those calculations, the 13th note you generate isn't a perfect octave of your starting note. It's just a tiny bit sharp. This little problem became known as the yellow bell cannot be restored, and it absolutely fascinated mathematicians for centuries. And the solution to that tiny flaw marks this major turning point in music history. See, the ancient system, based on those pure ratios like 3:2, created incredibly pure-sounding intervals, but it made it really hard to change keys in a song. The modern system, which we call equal temperament, solves this by dividing the octave into 12 perfectly equal steps, using an irrational number, the 12th root of 2. The goal wasn't cosmic resonance anymore, it was musical versatility. And here it is, the final, absolutely mind-blowing connection. Remember Zhu Ziyu, the scientist who said the ash blowing was just an allegory? He was the one who solved the yellow bell problem. Back in the 1500s, he was the first person in history to calculate the mathematical ratios for 12-tone equal temperament. Eventually, this idea made its way to Europe, where it laid the foundation for composers like Bach to write masterpieces. So think about it. Every single time you sit down at a piano, you are playing an instrument tuned according to the solution of an ancient Chinese cosmic and mathematical puzzle. And that just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The ancients saw music, math, and the calendar not as separate fields, but as different facets of a single unified reality. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our highly specialized modern world, what other profound connections are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to notice them?